Hey, there's our video. So, good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Or afternoon.
Where you are.
Well, you know, George Ryman said good morning, so he may be out west, and that's why I'm on the good morning tone. We are having some technical difficulties here. We went live, and it connected to LinkedIn or YouTube and Facebook, but didn't connect to LinkedIn, so we had to start over. So that's our problem.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Very excited to have you here. We're well into the month of July.
We are.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk today all about site plans, surveys, and site plans. We're going to try and go a little bit in depth here to kind of discuss what is the value of it and why you don't want to wing this stuff. You don't want to make it up on the fly. You don't want to think you can look at a piece of property and go, no problem.
Right. So this series is all about building using modular construction, offsite construction. Modular is our method of choice. It's something we've been doing for a long time. Last week, we were talking about the site, access to the site, logistics, how we're getting there and where we're going. Can you get to where you're going? Is offsite construction a solution? Is volumetric modular construction a solution for the project at hand? And now we're going a little bit further into the details, like Dave mentioned, and we're talking about the site survey and all the good information that you gather at this point.
Yeah. So the site survey is such an important part of any construction project. So whether it's a commercial project or whether it is a residential project, the information is really the same. Mm-hmm. It's a little more complex when you get into commercial and tie-ins and all that stuff and volume, but to simplify it, we are going to use a residential example just so we can get through everything.
Yeah. And if you're a builder out there watching, or if you are working with clients who don't really understand the importance of getting a site survey, a lot of people like to get to what they think is the fun part first, right? They want to out of the gate start designing the home and thinking, or designing the project and thinking about all the bells and whistles that they've been dreaming about for all of these years. And this is just a necessary step. It's a critical step in the process because you need to make sure that all of your dreams, all of your aspirations, all of those design details are really something that you could execute and build. And again, whether it's commercial or residential, a lot of what we're talking about, applies. But before you start going too far down the design path and getting too excited there, this is something you really need to do with your clients.
How many of you out there start a site or any type of work with a customer before you even have a site plan? I'd just like to know how many people actually go through this process, because there's a lot of people that go through it, they design, and then they find out something that they weren't able to do, or a septic or well, or just something in a wrong location and had to go back to design. But it also depends where you're at too. If you're designing for a 600-acre farm, unless you're building a 600-acre house, you can pretty much do what you want. But if you're like a lot of the world, we're designing on, subdivided lots, depending on where it's at. And there's rules and regulations and stuff that we need to follow. So why don't we jump into this?
Yeah, definitely. And as we're going along, this is something, if your clients are getting a little too excited and they are putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit, this is something that you could share with them.
For sure.
What we're talking about today, just so that everybody understands the importance of the detail and why this is so critical to the process.
100%. All right. So let's hop into it here. Hopefully we get these right. So last week we talked about, can we get to where, we're going? Mm-hmm. Can we get to the site? Can we do what we need to do? All right. So yes, we've determined we can do it. So
we can get there.
Now we say, all right, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, or, here's what we need. In our world, we say we need an updated survey to show what's on this property and what we can do, right? So that's kind of our first steps. Mm-hmm. What is that survey, Jennifer, going to show us?
Yeah. So for those of you looking at a survey for the first time, I'm going to answer that question in terms of the homeowner or the developer who's hopefully seen these before, but essentially you're going to see a lot of lines, a lot of graphs, a lot of charts, a lot of legends, everything that is tied to an important measurement or some type of regulation or something that the land is telling you essentially. So you have a great list up here, we can kind of check this off, but zoning regulations first and foremost.
Yeah. So we're going to run through this, and then as far as all the things we're going to cover today. So all these topics we're going to touch on. We're going to show some sample site plans. We're going to talk about these site plans. So we're going to cover today the zoning regulation, what meets and bounds of a property are, contour elevations, building setback lines, building envelope, a lot of area. There's a lot. There's 3 pages of this, everyone. So this is why you don't want to wing it. All right. So we have utility locations, water, sewer, well, city water, city sewer, whatever the case is. AC condensers, generator locations. Yes, a lot of towns make you put this stuff on.
Yeah.
Gas and electric meter service locations, sewer line connection points, drainage site plan. Am I tongue tied yet? Only a couple more. Test hole information, proposed finished floor heights, town zoning. My head's going to explode. There's so much to keep up with it.
I know. So maybe if you're showing this to your homeowners or your new clients, you edit this.
Oh yeah, this is not for a homeowner. Like you can show it to your homeowner. Maybe they want to learn this, but no. But with all this, like the zoning information, the building coverage allowed. And then, last but not least, it gets more technical. Floor area ratio. Not every town has that, but a lot are incorporating it.
Yeah.
And then we get into some of the things depending on where you live, right? Wetlands, FEMA flood zone, wind zone, velocity zones, things of that nature.
Yeah. And a lot of this is rooted in some of the language that we use here in the Northeast region, in the New England and coastal areas. But, an example of that is the floor area ratio, lot coverage. That might be referred to as something slightly different in your neck of the woods, in your region. But Dave will get into what that exactly means and what metrics are used there. And you can be on the lookout for stuff like that in your area.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jen, we're going to start off. What I'm going to put up here real quick is this is a commercial project, and I'm just going to show it for reference because one, the plans are, it's like 100 pages deep, and we're not going to get into that. We don't have time to do that kind of review. But this is kind of what you'll see when you get into a commercial structure. Let me see if I can blow this up. I don't think I can on this screen. Let me go to a different screen and I can show everybody.
And see the level of detail.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, there's different nuances again with the commercial projects. This is where you really need to pay attention to what's next to you. So it's one thing to know what's on your site, but it's also really important to know what's next to you, and what may have been there prior to you acquiring this land. And you know what? We have a good comment from Rick Hawkins, who maybe we can put it up there, who said he checks tax maps and setbacks.
What's up, Rick? There. Yeah, for sure. That's a great place to start. It's a great place to actually start, find out what the regulations are, and we'll jump into this. But what I wanted to show this for is just so people had some understanding of how much goes into this. You can see just this whole site plan. If you look on the side, I mean, it is just pages and pages, and we don't have time for that, at least not on this episode. So let's get back into what we do have time for, Jennifer. Oh, I got the little spinny wheel thing happening here.
Oh my gosh, bear with us as we go through.
Yeah. All right, go.
There we go. So, but again, it's the level of detail that you're looking for that will set your job off for success. We were talking with somebody yesterday who said that the longest leg of the journey is the very first step. And while it feels like, a lot of work does go into these plans, and obviously finding the right partner is critical to the success as well. Because once you get started on this process, you want to make sure they get you the information on a timely basis. So this is one partner also where if you haven't worked with an engineer in the past, obviously check references, ask around, and find somebody who's the right fit for you.
Absolutely. All right. So I have it. And I don't know why we're moving so slow today. Must be the weather. Either way. So this is just your standard site survey, right? This is an existing project that we're going to go through today. This is an existing project, right? So what you're seeing on this plan here is the existing structure, right, that we are going to demo. And I'll walk through this. So this is like when you show up to a site and you're like in this particular one, we're using a demo just because that happens with a lot of people. You're going to run into where you have a house sitting there.
Right.
Yes, it looks like a nice house, right?
I know,
we ripped it right down. Yeah, the customer wanted to rip it down. But being in the area, it was, right? But there's a couple things going on here, Jennifer. Power lines.
Yes.
Obviously, on this side of the street is never fun for us, but we were able to work through it. But this is what we're working with. This is the lot. It's a fairly level lot. There's not a lot of grading. There's not a lot of slope to this lot. There was a garage in the back there. That had to come out with this build and what we're doing now. So here it is, Jennifer. This is the new site plan.
Yeah, and I love this because it shows you what you're looking at when there's a pre-existing dwelling.
Yep.
And here we actually have two. And oftentimes, there will be, we'll mark this up and say, okay, this needs to be removed or that needs to be removed, because if those pre-existing dwellings are calculated in your lot coverage, that dramatically changes the size of the home that you can build. So be on the lookout for that. And I really like, again, this example because it is in a bit of a high density location. These streets are very, very narrow. And you have the power lines.
You do. And this is something too that I want to show you. One of the things that we've always done is we take a survey like this and we make a sample survey out of it. So when we're working in different parts, we can give the sample survey. As you can see right here, we have site plan requirements on the right-hand side. That way we say, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, depending on what surveyor engineer you use, or if you have a standard survey engineer, but this next subdivision's being built in Colorado versus Pennsylvania. They know what you want to see on your site plan to help you make the determinations that you need to make to design and build the structure that you would like to build.
So what you're saying is you put this checklist on an old survey that you had from another client, that isn't relevant to this job. You just put this checklist on the survey and told your clients who may not know what to ask their engineer what to ask for.
That's correct.
Well, isn't that easy?
It is. So I'm actually going to blow it up so we can show everybody this. So let's see if this will come up. All right. So let me go back over here. So you can see on our site plan, this is a sample site plan. We actually have site plan requirements listed here. And these site plan requirements are exactly that. So when this goes to a new surveyor or a new civil engineer, they're going to get everything that we want. We save ourselves time. Time is money. Right?
I like it.
Time is money. All right. So as we jump through this, Jennifer, let's get into some of the things that would be on these site plans. And I'm going to use this interactive PDF page here. Let me close that as well so we can look at this. So what is meets and bounds of the property?
That is a great question. And again, this is one of the things that we have to pay attention to regionally, right?
Yeah.
Because it might be a little bit different for every 50 miles that you travel.
Depending on how the state looks at what the property lines are, what the easements are, what the town owns. But basically your meets and bounds are, what are the four, if it's a square or rectangular property, what is the four corners of your property? And you draw your straight lines, and that's kind of giving you the outlines. And then I have it blocked out on this, but to the left and the right, it's going to show the neighbors' names and property and what their tax number is and lot numbers and what have you. So those are all going to be on here. So that's number one. So basically it's just the outline of what that property is. Now, let's get into what the contour elevations of the property, Jennifer. So if we have grade on a property, why is that so important to know when designing a house?
Yeah, so this is really, like Dave said, this is where you're really going to want this, because if there are any views to consider, if the client wants a walkout basement, access, if there are any drainage issues, this is where you'll need to start talking about that and looking at that. If everything is running into where you're putting the house,
that's correct.
That's one thing. Or if there's a dramatic drop off somewhere, that's another. You may need to do some
walkout basement. If you're going to have egress basement, whatever the case is, you're going to have living space, garage under. And again, this was a fairly flat lot, but if you can see my cursor here, you can see we have an elevation of 95.3 here, but there is some grade here. Here we're up to 95.9, right? Over here, you can see we have a grade of 96. Now, the heavy dark lines, Jennifer, do you know what those are?
Tell us.
Heavy dark lines are going to be the new grade. The dashed
The
line, the
proposed
dotted
grade.
lines are the existing grades. So when you see the heavier dark lines, that's going to signify where we're going to make a grade change, and we're going to change some of these things.
Exactly. And you can see where that proposed patio is coming into play.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we moved some of this earth around, is so that they could have that landscape, that hardscape.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that saying, let's move into what are now the setbacks of the property. And what do the building setback lines tell us, Jennifer?
So essentially, we're going to figure out where we can start the construction of the home, what our footprint actually is. Is that where we're going
So
with this?
another great thing, you don't have to figure this out on your own when you have a site plan and a survey. As you can see on here, right, this is the information that we need to know. We need to know, do I have to be 10 feet from my neighbor, or do I have to be 50 feet from my neighbor? Do I have to be 50 feet from the front yard setback from the street? How far from the rear?
Right.
Is it 100 feet? Am I a corner lot?
That makes
Does that mean I have 2 front yards?
Exactly.
Does it? These are all the questions that one needs to work through and understand as they're going through these things. So
Yeah, and we've even bumped into it with those corner lots when you want to change the position of the driveway or the garage. Those are the questions that you need to ask about for sure. How you're placing that home.
Yep. So here, this is what's great about this, right? So here's our setback lines. Actually, let me go back up here. If we look, and you don't have to go by all these setback lines, but if we look at our setback lines up here, required side setback is 10 feet. So I need to be off the neighbor's yard by 10 feet on my side yard setbacks. Right. 2 sides have to equal 25 feet. So that means 10 feet on one, 15 on the other, or maybe 12 and a half and 12 and a half. Right. So it's combined setbacks. So if we go down here, and we'll just use the 10 foot as an example, there's your setback. It is showing your setback. And this is setting us up for the next thing. And I want everybody, in fact, I'll put it up now, is the building envelope. And I'll try and keep this high because these setbacks are giving us our building envelope.
Well, even with that, the reason why you need the site survey, especially when there's a pre-existing dwelling, is that zoning regulations may have changed between the time that original building was built and this new construction is going up. So if that's the case, you do have options.
You do, right? And sometimes you're grandfathered in with certain things. So you have to get into the zoning. That's where the surveyors, engineers can help. That's where doing tax map searches, like, Mr. Hawkins alluded to, you can go and you can do a lot of your homework on this yourself. But getting back to what we were talking about with the setbacks, front yard, rear yard, the important thing is what is my building envelope? And all that building envelope is, if you look at this map, you will see, come on, scroll up. You will see this dotted line right here. See this dotted line? And we maximize. Look how close we went. 15 feet here, 10 feet here. There's our 25, like it's set up over here. Right. But this is our building envelope, this heavily dotted line. Oh, I'm sorry, this lightly dotted line right here.
So with that, Dave, if somebody is looking at this for the first time, let's say a homeowner, what happens with the hardscapes and decking and porches? Does that get counted? Or is it truly just the home? All right. So,
you're jumping ahead on me a little bit here. So we're going to get into
setbacks. Answer the question in terms of setbacks.
So a lot of towns are different. It depends if it's impervious coverage or pervious coverage. What does that mean? Does the water drain through it? Does the water not drain through it? Right. Some towns will say, well, you can't have steps because you're over on coverage. However, if you stack 3 rocks into your front door, that doesn't cover. So that happens on Block Island.
So this is when we're talking about those creative solutions, right?
Yeah. Because rocks are a natural feature, and you can stack rocks, apparently big rocks, and have a nice front walk. And you see that a lot here in Connecticut. You see it a lot on the islands where they are having a lot stricter regulations. So, all right. So with that said, what is the building envelope determine for us? I'll answer my own question. It determines where we can place that building. It gives us the outline that we need to stay within this space, right? This space here that you're seeing, this little dotted line all the way around right here, we're all the way to the setbacks and across, tells you where the building has to go. It does not mean that you can fill that entire area with your house.
But I want to.
I don't care. And the tax assessor and zoning and the building official, they're not going to care either. They're not. All right. So as we walk through this site plan, like there's so much to know. We're not even at the tip of this yet. We're just figuring out what is our building envelope.
Right.
What area can I build in?
Right.
I don't even know how big I can build yet.
Right. And so, I mean, the other thing we're trying to get to as well is what can the client, what have they budgeted? You know, what can they, number one, what do they want to build? But number two, what can their budget allow them to build? So we're trying to get to two answers here.
We are definitely trying to get to two answers. For us and how we've always worked, we don't do anything until we really have plans and surveys, unless it's a big property and we know that the sky's the limit for what we want to do within the budget. But when you're on a tight lot, and that's why we're using this as an example, every inch counts. As you can see on this structure here, and I'll blow it up, you know, because this is in a very high net worth area where homes go for a lot. We had 0 setback lines. You want to know something that happened on this job?
Tell us.
And we caught it. Siding counts. Siding counts on the width of your house. The profile
of the siding.
We had to change the profile by that much to get approved. So you really got to know this stuff.
Yeah. Even with this, I mean, this is an area where we had built in multiple times and with an engineer that we have worked with multiple times, and still there was an aha moment where we discovered something new. So we are always learning. We are always applying these to our new checklists.
Especially when you maximize the footprint. When you maximize the footprint, you leave yourself 0 room for any mistakes. But in some areas, such as this one, that maximum footprint equals a lot of equity and money for the customer.
Yeah. And so when you're thinking about this, you know, those dramatic overhangs or that, you know, and any type of projection, if you will, like even like a fireplace that projects out. These are the things that you need to be looking for and uncovering. And sometimes you do bump into them the hard way. But the other reason that these site surveys are so important is because you don't know what's under the ground. Just don't know what's under there.
You got X-ray vision?
I know.
Do you have X-ray? Can you see?
I wish.
I know we'd be rich. We'd be floating on a yacht somewhere if we could pull that one off.
But we are rich, honey. We have each other.
All right, so moving on. Here we go. Listen. All right, so what else now are we trying to figure out? We're trying to figure out what the lot area, because this all comes down to mathematical calculations. With the lot area, same thing. This is what's so great about this. Let me add it back to the stream. This handy dandy little chart that they give you up here based on the zone you're in. Oh, come on, work with me. I don't know why it's trying to pick it up to change things. So even you'll see here, required lot areas, 14,250 square feet. We had an existing 8,712 square feet. Do we conform? What do you think that N stood for?
I never liked that N.
No.
Yeah, I don't.
No, we didn't conform. So there was variances, there was approvals, there was a lot that had to go into this. You need to understand these numbers, right? If required was 14,250 and this said 14,250, I wouldn't have needed any variances, and that N would have been a Y.
Exactly.
Right? Is that how Y? Who was it? Who were the singers? YMCA.
Oh my gosh.
Right? The
Y. Village People.
Village People. That's how they do it. Yeah. So that would have been the lot coverage, right? So the lot area. So we need to figure out the lot area. Why do we need to figure out the lot area? And this is where getting into working with your civil engineer on a tight lot really makes a lot of sense, because the lot area is going to tell you eventually what your coverage is for impervious coverage or pervious coverage. How much of a footprint can your house take up? Right.
So I don't think we're seeing on this one also, but another thing that we need to be super aware of is height restrictions, especially when you are in either coastal or city areas. Like
it's all here. It's all here. Let's talk about it. Yeah. That's a great point. I didn't bring it up. You're jumping ahead of me today.
I know. We're both so excited about this topic.
So back on lot area first, and then we're getting the height coverage. Right, the map you can see right here. We're allowed 14,250. We only have an existing 8,712. So what does that mean? It says maximum building coverage 20%. I'm only allowed 17% if I'm building at the 8,000, which my lot is. So I can only cover 17%. However, since we were going to the variance and we were throwing ourselves on the sword and begging for them to allow us to do something more in line with other people, they actually gave us 19.96% on a smaller lot. So we were able to maximize that lot for what we wanted to do. All math. And it comes down to really understanding what that math is. So I hate math. Oh, thank goodness for calculators. So that's kind of what's going into this. And this is why we're walking through this site plan. It's really important that people that are going to do this, whether it's modular, panelized, stick, whatever it is, you have to understand all of this stuff. And the same principles apply on big projects as they do on small projects. It's just easier to get through it this way.
They do. And it feels like there's so much overwhelming and so much content on these surveys. But really, when you go through it line by line, you take that time, you take those added few minutes, 20, 30 minutes with your client and really break this down for them. And they start to understand the why behind having to do this, then it all comes together. Because we have found that some clients just feel like they would just want to race straight to the design of the home and skip this piece.
They do, but a lot of times it comes back to bite them in the butt. You know, oh, we got it. We got the car. I've heard it so many times. We got it. You know, we got plenty of space. Well, that doesn't always work. So, hey, let's give a couple quick shout outs, Jennifer. George Ryman, what's up, man? Good to see you from hot Phoenix, Arizona. Always great to have you. We got Shane McNutt in the house from Nudo. What's up, Shane? I hope as well. And of course, Rick Hawkins is saying hi from Atlanta.
Yeah, with great call outs on logistics and everything.
Yeah. Hey, look at that. Joe's joining us today. What's happening, Joe? Too bad I didn't discover Dave Cooper live before I decided to try building a modular home.
Oh, Joe.
Joe, I know you guys had a rough go. We did talk about that a while ago, but you guys seem to be doing well now, and I hope all is well. You got a great show too. He does motorcycles.
If anybody's into vintage motocross, you've got to check out Joe Abbott's Facebook page because it's oldies but goodies on there, talking hardcore old school motocross. It's old a lot of fun.
Very old school. Tiffany McCall, what's happening, Tiffany? RWC warranty and the current chair of the Building Systems Council.
Hi, Tiffany.
I love it. We got good old Jerry saying hello. God's morning, everyone.
It is God's morning.
It is God's morning. We got Mark. What's happening, Mark Willie? Site needs and orientation. Site needs and orientation is everything. All right, now see, I know where Mark's going. Well, he's spinning this into BS science, and you're absolutely right. Yeah. Maybe that's a BS science topic coming up.
This is something near and dear to my heart. So the other thing that we're trying to figure out here with the placement of the home is how do we optimize natural light and natural ventilation? How do we really take the burden off some of our systems and really let the home do what it can do on its own? And there's so many great ways to do that once you have the site survey. So good point, Mark.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Rick Hawkins had a comment. Site plans with contour lines help in determining foundation design and any fee requirements.
See, I think that Rick is now reading my mind because this is somewhere I wanted to go in terms of this conversation. So thank you, Rick. You're jumping ahead.
No. I built this one.
I know
you want to go.
But we do. There's so much we can talk about in terms of foundations.
Absolutely.
And this is a critical piece of information you need when you're having that conversation.
For sure. All right, let me get back over to where we were and let's keep going here. All right. So what's next then? So we've determined what our lot size is. We've determined what the setbacks are that we have to stay within from our neighbor's house in the roads in the rear yard. Now we determined our lot coverage, which was a percentage derived from above the lot area, right? Lot coverage derived from the lot area. Now what we're going to get into, Jennifer, is utility stuff.
Yes.
Where are the utilities on this property? Is it, I know you want to talk. I got a lot to say. Is it well, septic, overhead wires, underground wires? Is there a gas line or is there propane?
Is there a telephone pole or do you need a new one?
That's right.
I mean, there are so many questions to ask, and this is where your checklist becomes so handy. And you may not be able to get everything on here on this checklist, but these are things you have to ask.
You have to ask and you have to know. So why do you have to know where your well and water and sewer and septic are all coming into the house when you're designing?
Well, for so many reasons. Number one, if it's a well, obviously you have to figure out where you have to do that system design before you know where the house is going. So that's a big deal. You need to know where the power is coming into the home. Right. I mean, this is the planning process that we talk about in terms of offsite construction, and how when you have all of these conversations up front and you determine the service locations and the water service and all of that, it's not adding to the process. That conversation has to happen at some point in time, no matter what. What we're trying to do is pull them forward, have them up front, so that when we do start construction, we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. Because listen, especially in off-site construction, knowing what side of the house your 200 amp sub panel is going to be on and your utilities and where you're placing things. And if you're into BS science, that really becomes even more important in understanding where your mechanicals are and how you're feeding the house and everything. Right. But with that said, yes, you need to know what is happening, where your utility lines are coming in. So when you're designing the house, especially with offsite and modular, when the factory says, where would you like your 200 amp sub panel, you already know, ooh, if I can put it right there in my basement, that's the most convenient. I don't have to put it there because I can put a disconnect and move it. But that is the smartest place to put it.
So what if somebody says, but I don't like the way it looks there. I don't want that there.
You don't have to have it there.
I want it behind the house.
Absolutely. Okay, let's back off. So here's the thing. Internally, they can determine where they want their sub panel. Externally, typically the utility company is going to say, this is where it goes. You can be 16 inches this way. You can be 16 inches this way. If you designed a house already and there's a window there, guess what? You're redesigning the house. The utility companies determine where it goes. A lot of them are going to wireless meters and what have you now, but utility companies roll the roost when it comes to, you want power, this is what we want, and this is where we're placing it.
Right. And not only this is where we're placing it, but this is how high it needs to be. Again, we build a lot in these coastal locations. So they will also, knowing your zoning regulations, knowing your setbacks, knowing your height restrictions, all of that is going to tell you where on the house is that going.
Yeah. What else is on the house that we need to talk about? If you're in a city environment and you have natural gas and electric service locations, same thing. Now, this house was going to be actually propane, so there wasn't gas on this house that runs in. That's why you're only seeing the utility pole here to the left. You're seeing the water here, and you're seeing the sewer coming in on the right side. Nothing comes in the same side.
So, Dave, you bring up a good point. If this client had an above ground propane tank, does that count in lot coverage?
Depends on where you build. And it depends if you put a permanent pad down or a stone pad, right? So there's all kinds of variables there. But you're right. And a job like this one, Jennifer, and I'm going to take this off because I think we're done with utilities and I think people get it. We're beating a horse here. What you're going to see, even on this, we had to show AC condenser pad. Where does that go on this house? Because you're absolutely right. On this particular project, this job requires that to be accounted for in the lot coverage. It needs to be accounted for in the lot coverage.
So
for sure.
Again, talking about regionality and things that change from town to town, we've also discovered that garbage bins may also be counted in lot coverage.
It's getting crazy.
So we're not saying this to scare you. We're not saying this to say don't do it, abandon ship. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to say is just ask questions, even if they seem so inconsequential. In the end, they might not be so inconsequential.
Have a survey with a
checklist,
a sample checklist like we're showing you here. It's already figured out. Right? Here's a survey with a sample checklist that you can give anybody to make sure they look at everything. And then there's another one pager that even goes with this.
Right.
So, but what you're saying, Jennifer, is very accurate. I mean, what we're doing here is giving you our worst case scenarios of properties that we've built on. And typically, if you're building on infill lots, small properties, real, like in a nice suburban area where they'll, 50 by 100, 150 by 150 lots, you need to pay attention to all this stuff. If you're building on the farm, whatever, you can get away with not doing half of this stuff, but that's typically not going to be the case, for a lot of people. All right. So moving on, Jennifer, what didn't we talk
Where
about?
are we? Sewer lines, connection.
Ooh, we didn't talk about drainage plans. All right, so here's another thing, and I have to go to an actual different plan for this one. Let me show you this here. That's not it. There it is.
Yeah. So while you're pulling this up, I mean, this is something last week when we talked about access to the sites, and we showed some photos of some really tight locations. So again, you know, from a drainage perspective, it's not just about you. It may also be about your neighbors.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of towns, especially coastal in the city, they're going to require a drainage plan. In this particular town, they require that if you build a house bigger than the one that was already there, if one did exist, you need to control all the water runoff from your roof on your own property. And I mean control it. So what we're kind of showing here, Jennifer, is, I don't know if people can see it, but all these dotted lines are the gutter runoffs, right? Here's our condensers. Here's a generator pad. Here's a clean out for a proposed catch basin. You got to put a proposed catch basin on your property. And then back here is what we call Coltech chambers. So what is a Coltech chamber? Well, that's these things. Let me see if I can actually show a Coltech chamber here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is a residential property, fairly simple. But here's a Coltech recharger. Basically what this means is when it rains cats and dogs and cows and pigs, you got to collect them all and put them inside these chambers here, right? And they can't get out of there right away. They got to slowly work their way back into the property. So you don't run water into your neighbor's property, or you don't put bad water into city water or what have you.
Right.
So drainage is another big thing. It's happening more and more across the country, and more towns are controlling the runoff in the water. You really, really, really need to pay attention to this part because it adds big numbers to a job.
And again, this is why you need this tool. This is why you need this document, because it will inform all of the work required before you even start designing the home. So, you know, and listen, what, you know, it's all about location, right? People want to live where they want to live. So they may not concede on the lot or the location, you know, if they've already purchased the lot or perhaps they inherited it. But you have to know what's under the land, what the requirements are.
For sure. 100%. Especially when designing a house on a smaller lot, you need to make sure that you can handle all the drainage requirements. This had, I think, 16 Coltechs. Had these back here and these two up here, Jennifer, a lot. But we maximized the coverage. And what a lot of people don't know, even in this driveway, this driveway was like 3 feet depth. It became part of the catch basin as well to control the water because the customer just wanted what they wanted, and we were able to do it. All right. So with that said, drainage is very important. So you need to pay attention to what's happening with drainage. Now, something we didn't talk about that I'm going to put up here because I don't have it on here is test hole information and location. This area was in a low laying area, but luckily enough, we didn't hit water until about 9.5 feet down.
Right. And so we talked about this on some previous episodes where our builders that we were working with, they had to go more than 10 feet down because they did find water, you know, when they did these test holes and nobody knew it was there. Right. It was one of those things. And
that job also, we were going to do a 10-foot foundation. You're absolutely right. But we had to actually raise the internal slab up. Because we wanted to be as high get above the water table. We build under the water table. Don't get me wrong. There's a cost associated with it. We do not build submarines though. I'm just telling you now, any builder out there that says, hey, they'll guarantee you no water. Well, they might, but not when you're building under the water table.
Right.
So, but there are ways to mitigate it and keep your basement dry, but there's a cost to doing it for sure. Perfect.
So where are we now?
All right, so let's get into it. We have all this laid out. We now have come up with a house plan, Jennifer. We got our footprint. Customers loving it. Things are great. Things are groovy.
I feel like there's a but. Is there a but coming?
No, not really. There's no but.
All right.
There's no but. But we have a property. Now we got to figure out where and how do we put it on the property. How does the foundation guy know how high to build his foundation wall out of the ground and where's the top of plate going to be? So when you set your modulars, and you got floor depth, you got to calculate for your floor depth. And what's that going to give us, Jennifer? I'll just keep this existing plan that I already had up here, right? That's going to give us, oh, come on, click in.
Yeah, where are we?
All right, don't say it. Don't say. What does FFE mean, Jennifer?
You know what? All these acronyms, we need that acronym cheat sheet from John Sicilian.
We do.
Add a couple of these on. Come on, I know you're excited. Go on.
All right, so finished floor elevation, right? That's finished floor, 102.5, right? BFE.
You got me on this one.
Basement floor elevation,
there we
92 to 102.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the basement height, floor to floor, right? So that's a 9-foot basement. But I'm just using rough math with 12 inches of floor joists and subfloor. That's what that's doing there. So where do we get this 102.5? If we actually look around the property, we got a pretty flat lot. Again, new elevation, but the old elevation was pretty close, 100. So we're going to be roughly about 2.5 feet above grade on the front of the house to our finished floor. In theory, this is one of those areas where you fudge it based on how the grading really truly works out. It always looks great on paper. Doesn't necessarily mean it always works in the field. Just saying, no offense, civil engineers. But yeah, it just doesn't always work that great in the field. Something else I wanted to point out on here, a lot of people don't see. This was the old building here underneath this one. And this was a huge, like the Volkswagen size pieces of ledge. That was rock underneath there. So we had to build all the deck around that piece of ledge. We chopped it down the best we could, but had a ton of ledge. So, all right, back on track, Jen. You're getting off track.
It happens.
I know.
To the best of us.
Okay, so here we are. Building coverage allowed, we covered. Floor area ratio. Now, here's another thing that we should have maybe even talked about a little bit earlier before we got to the design and finished floor elevation. But floor area ratio, Jen, we have a video on this. Can you put it up in the comments?
Yeah, I definitely can. And you know what? Rick again stole my thunder because another thing that we didn't talk about was exactly what happened on this job that we're showing, where we did get in touch with the
tree warden.
Yeah,
the tree warden.
It
does happen quite a bit, Rick. Absolutely. Tree wardens are a real thing, everybody. Especially, now in today's day and age. Let me just do this here real quick. Take that off. Go up here and give credit where credit's due. When you get into the arborists, you get into the tree wardens, Rick, you're absolutely right. This job was interesting because we did have a big tree in the front left property. And one of the things that happened after the tree warden didn't get back to us for a month and a half is he goes, "Oh, yeah, that tree's not on. That's not on my list." And for a month and a half, we were delayed because we couldn't do anything until he gave us an answer.
Yeah.
So tree wardens.
Yeah, and one of the other jobs we had referenced, we were able to take down a historical tree, but had to replace it with a plaque. So these are the funny things that you run into when you're building. These are the stories that we bond over.
So, and to be clear, historical in the terms of a famous poet, and historical in terms of what the town were two different things. So it wasn't a town approval.
It was the historical.
It was a historical approval from a town because a famous poet sat under that tree and wrote a poem. All right, get it. But you still got to go through it. You still want to play nice with everybody, and we ended up doing a plaque for him. What's the big deal?
Yeah,
which was good.
Nice.
So good comment, Rick. We do have tree wardens. And I love the tree wardens. I like them better if they would respond.
Well, faster. I mean, you know what? That's true. But Mark also put something in the comments too, in terms of, where you're positioning the house. You may want to seek out those large trees that are healthy large trees, because it's part of your natural shading. And that's going to help you, especially in areas that get very hot. So
for sure.
I know along the coast, there are a lot of builders who consider that the natural tree line as it relates to outdoor living space, looking to see if there's any tree coverage for that outdoor living. And also if you're installing anything like a pool or anything like that, those trees do come into design, the design aspect of the home.
They very much so do. All right. Where were we? Oh, floor area ratio. Check out the video on floor area ratio. If you truly want to understand what it means, this is what it meant in one of the towns we were in. I did a video on it because it was so controversial. They wouldn't even let us use our own attic space for
Right.
storage. They told you how to do the truss system. However, floor area ratio is another just mathematical calculation that the town uses. It basically says this is how much floor area you're allowed to live on in your house. If you have more than that, you got to make your house smaller, regardless if it fits on your property or not, in your setbacks, in your building envelope. They don't care. All right, Jennifer. So just a couple more things. We're not going to show it on the map here, but we do have other things to pay attention to. So depending where you live, we are coastal, right? So, or you live near a lake, or you have a beautiful tranquility stream running through your backyard. Guess what?
They look pretty.
They look pretty until you got to build around them.
Well, I mean, who did that so successfully? None other than Frank Lloyd Wright. I mean,
can you imagine if he tried to build that house today, Falling Waters?
I don't know if zoning would have approved that landmark home. I mean, but seriously, I mean, it can be done, right? With planning and engineering and everything else, it can be done. It can be beautiful, and it can withstand the natural elements.
It really can. You just give me an idea. We should go live stream from Frank Lloyd Wright's.
Wouldn't that be fun?
That'd be cool, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll get all the zoning engineers around us.
Oh my gosh, their heads will fall off.
So, all right. So with that said, you got to pay attention. You don't have to live on the coast for this to be a problem. You just need to live around water, lowlands, wetlands, or just have wet plants. I don't know what they call them, but plants that live in wet areas, right? So that's one thing. So what are some of the other things you can do? You can check your FEMA flood zone map. I have an example of that somewhere, Jennifer.
Yeah, and some of the towns I know around here also, as it relates to these regulations, have amazing maps online that you can look at. I know, for example, Charleston, Rhode Island has an amazing online reference that you can use to see what zone you're in. And again, all of this will inform the material selections you're using in the house. So if you are in a wind zone, you may have to move to that impact glass window, which all of a sudden, there's a price tag associated with that. And your client may need to make concessions because now they need to spend more on their windows and doors than they had thought originally. Yeah.
Well, we're moving kind of slow on the flood map here. But what this map will do once it catches up, it'll actually start defining where the flood zones are. And this is what a lot of the insurance companies look at and everything else. So if you do live around the stream or what have you, you can go right here to mscfema.gov and I'm not sure what's going on there, but you can start searching these things yourself and really get a good feel. It's going to give you all of these different things as soon as it catches up with what I'm doing here, using too much bandwidth. So FEMA flood map, you can check these things out. It's a great place to go. Other things, wind zone, Jennifer. It is a big deal. You really have to understand where you're at. If you're in a wind zone at 100 mile an hour, 110 mile an hour, 130, you're in Haiti and it's like 160 mile an hour if they get that in the hurricanes. But
and so another thing you need to be on the lookout for is if your state has recently adopted an updated version of building codes. Some of these things do change in that adoption of a new building code. So that's something you need to be on the lookout for as well is, okay, maybe you built somewhere last year, but now you've upgraded to a more recent publication of the code. You have to double check because some things, believe it or not, do get relaxed, right? Some things get a little bit dialed back. Other things might get amped up or become a little bit more restrictive in nature. But we have bumped into instances where it became a little bit more relaxed and certain things that we had to do in wind zones in the past were no longer required, which was a big win for the homeowner.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely like impact glass windows. There's some states that are giving credits or waivers, they call them. You just have to apply for them and you can save yourself from doing those things. But you just also have to know the consequences of not doing them if a storm comes, right? That's the other side of that. So, all right, Jennifer, I think the last one was velocity zone. Does anybody know the difference? Anybody out there know the difference between a wind zone, a flood zone, and a velocity zone?
Yeah, and I think the acronym there too is VE zone, right?
VE zone. Yeah. So you have wind, right? Then you have flood where the water just rises, but then you got velocity zone, which is like a big wave just coming in. pounding with the wind and the water and everything else. So
and
you combined all those forces.
It risks moving other things from somebody else's property onto yours. So that may not have necessarily been driven by the wind or water alone.
That's right. You get into breakaway walls and everything else you got to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Well, there you have it. I mean, I don't know. Give us your opinion. Was that a pretty detailed explanation of a site plan, or is it like the rest of my life where I just feel like I'm all over the place?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, but but essentially you need this document because the answers are found within the document.
Yeah,
so
they really are.
Even if you don't know what you're looking for, or you don't know what you're asking, chances are you'll find the answer there. Once you figure out all the lines, all the acronyms, all the dashes, all the dots.
Yeah. And why is this so important if you're a modular or panelized builder? Why is this so important?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. Know before you go.
Yeah.
Can you do this? Can you get there? And again, Mark chimed in the comments. You may not be able to get there with modular construction. Maybe you need to shift to panelized. You know, maybe there's a different method of offsite construction that could be used, or maybe like plant prefab out in California.
You're hybrid.
Steve Glenn, you're using
you do
both.
a hybrid.
You know that there are some components that you can bring in using modular, and then maybe you're on some type of steep grade where you build the rest panelized. I mean, there are workarounds. And again, Rick, you know, I want to get into the foundations because we're big believers in superior walls and how that comes together, a natural extension of offsite construction. So,
man, how'd you go from site surveys to foundation walls, man? I love superior walls too,
but it all comes into play. These are all building blocks that you can use and quivers in your tool belt, in your tools in your tool belt. I'm getting my sayings mixed up, but you can mix and match your way through the appropriate solution for the client.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Just keep in mind when you're going volumetric, modular, or panelized, you don't want to show up on site and not have some of these answers figured out. Even if zoning misses something, if you miss it, they're going to hold you accountable to it. Bottom line, they're going to hold you accountable. You're going to have to make a change unless you really butter them up. But I think that's the important thing. Devil's in the detail, offsite construction. Think it through up front, and it'll save you time, money, headaches, lawsuits, anything else. You just think it through up front, and we build better, we build smarter, we save energy, we save material, and we save time and make happy customers.
Right. And listen, it's all about less disruption to the job site as well. That's a big win with offsite construction, especially when you're building in areas where you don't want to disrupt the natural landscape. You don't want to pull out any of those big trees that are providing the shade down in Texas. You don't want to disrupt the coastline. This is where it's all a big win. And again, reach out to people who are building in the area, your local home builders remodelers association. We, right before things started to get a little bit crazy, we had a monthly meeting with local code officials and really tried to start that conversation with the people who are enforcing the code. So build that relationship before you need it.
Listen, always, I say this to everybody, our project managers that we've had over the years, go and talk to the building official. Am I doing everything you want? Am I missing anything? What is your biggest pet peeve? So I make sure I get it right. Right? Because it just saves a lot of headaches. And then they feel like you're listening to them, and you're going to listen to them one way or the other, unfortunately. And that's just the way it goes. So do it up front. All right, Jennifer, listen, we are at 56 minutes and 50 seconds. What is coming up tomorrow, everybody?
Oh my gosh. So super excited to announce that we'll be out and about on location.
Yeah, we will. Hey, Tom, we are going to be out and about on location tomorrow. Guess what? SIGA. We are going up to New Hampshire. We are going to be at the National Training Center. Yours truly is going to sit through the training class and learn something about weather barriers and weather tight. And know what's even better about this, Jennifer?
Tell us.
It leads into Friday's show, which is all about weather barriers, which we're going to have the CEO and others on as well of SIGA. So with that said, though, tune in tomorrow. We are going to live stream at 1 o'clock, not 11, 1 o'clock. You've seen it across the ticker on the bottom all day, all show. So join us for that. We're gonna talk to the people that went through the course. We're gonna talk to the trainer, Ken, that's doing the course. And then I'm going to give you my opinion on the course.
Can't wait.
You want my opinion? Who wants more of my opinion? I know she doesn't.
Like we had to ask.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Listen, well, you know what we need to do? We didn't do Chen. See, you're messing me up now. You're getting me all off my guard. All right. So here's the other stuff. Let's just put it up there. So we told them where we're going to be tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What did I do there? July 7th.
July 7th.
July 7th. Yeah.
No,
July 9th. I don't know what I did there.
So July 9th.
Yep. And then Friday. Go ahead.
I know we have Miles Biggs increasing influence. The last few shows with Miles have been fabulous.
Yep. It's been a lot of fun. And then Friday, Mark Bare Naked Willie, who is on here, always chiming in. We're going to talk house barriers and have a lot of fun with that. Mm-hmm. And then, as always, get involved. We need to keep growing our associations. They fight for us. They lobby for us. You may not agree with everything they're doing, but I have to tell you, we're gaining traction. Things are moving in the right direction. We have all these great organizations that support us. We need to support them, and we need to change the way we build, but we're not going to do it without the support of these great organizations and these people that are doing it. And guess what? That's not even a paid for sponsorship. That's just the truth.
Well, this is the driver of the show and what we're doing. Let's change the way we build together.
Yep, 100%. That's it. We're done. We're over. All right, everybody. What do you think, Jen?
Thanks, everyone.
Listen, I hope everybody has a great, great day. We'll see you tomorrow. DaveCooper.live. Jennifer Cooper. This is an episode 15 of Building Modular. We are over 100 episodes, I think, already. So we'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock, New Hampshire.
Great.
Be there.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.